In 2003, the United States launched a military invasion of Iraq, igniting debates around presidential power and the perpetual cycle of conflict. Why does it seem that every occupant of the Oval Office either manages or inherits a war? This question haunts our understanding of American leadership and prompts a broader exploration. Is war an indispensable part of any U.S. president's tenure? The significance of this issue stretches beyond partisanship. It reveals how war has shaped domestic policy, global alliances, and public opinion throughout the nation's history. From the earliest days of the Republic to the modern era, countless conflicts have influenced each commander-in-chief's agenda, legacy, and policy priorities. Today, it is crucial to examine the roots of this pattern and discern how the presidency itself might be inseparable from the machinery of war. By looking at the origins of America's global role, the internal pressures faced by leaders, and the broader historical context, we may find answers to why every U.S. president can be labeled as a war president. We must investigate how these conflicts emerged and persisted, as well as how they continue to color contemporary debates on national security, international responsibility, and moral leadership. To comprehend why war seems to accompany every presidency, one must revisit the expansive geography and founding principles of the United States. From the nation's inception, territorial ambition and a belief in manifest destiny drove expansion across North America, prompting conflict with indigenous peoples and foreign powers. Early skirmishes, such as the Northwest Indian War under President George Washington, set the stage for ongoing military engagements that would characterize future administrations. The vastness of the continent, combined with an emerging industrial base, fueled a desire for resources, markets, and strategic advantage. These ambitions carried the country beyond its borders, establishing a global presence that would be asserted time and again. The Spanish-American War under President William McKinley marked a turning point, positioning the United States as an imperial power in the late 19th century. Subsequently, the geographical reach of American influence spanned oceans and continents, forging new alliances and antagonisms. Each presidential administration found itself navigating a legacy of expansionist policy, entangling the office with foreign theaters of conflict. Regardless of political ideology, presidents confronted the legacy of these expansions, grappling with both the temptations and the obligations that came with global power. Tracing the role of war in the American presidency requires following a thread that runs through nearly every epoch. In the 18th century, George Washington led troops during the Revolutionary War and faced ongoing frontier conflicts. At the dawn of the 19th century, James Madison waged the War of 1812, often regarded as the Second War of Independence. Andrew Jackson, famously known for his military background, steered the nation through the Black Hawk War and the Second Seminole War. In the mid-19th century, James K. Polk presided over the Mexican-American War, further solidifying territorial gains that inflamed tensions over slavery. Abraham Lincoln, confronting the most devastating internal conflict in American history, led the nation through the Civil War, which redefined federal authority and ended legal slavery. As the United States emerged as an industrial powerhouse, William McKinley and Theodore Roosevelt expanded its influence abroad during the Spanish-American War and the Philippine-American War. The early 20th century saw Woodrow Wilson guide the nation through World War I, asserting a new global role for America. Even the interwar years were not entirely free from conflict, as interventions in Latin America continued under various administrations. Franklin D. Roosevelt oversaw the largest mobilization in history during World War II, setting the stage for Harry S. Truman to usher in the atomic age, with the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki defining a new era of warfare. The Cold War dominated subsequent presidencies, forcing leaders into global confrontations that shaped policy and perception. Dwight D. Eisenhower navigated the Korean armistice and the complexities of nuclear deterrence. John F. Kennedy faced the Cuban Missile Crisis, coming perilously close to nuclear catastrophe. Lyndon B. Johnson escalated the Vietnam War, which sparked nationwide protests and tested the resolve of American democracy. Richard Nixon, while eventually withdrawing from Vietnam, expanded bombing campaigns in Southeast Asia, reflecting the entrenching nature of Cold War logic. Gerald Ford oversaw the final withdrawal from Saigon, but the shadows of conflict persisted. Jimmy Carter, despite championing human rights, wrestled with the Iranian hostage crisis and Cold War pressures in Afghanistan. Ronald Reagan amplified the arms race and launched interventions in Grenada and Central America. George H.W. Bush led a coalition against Iraq and the Gulf War, reaffirming America's post-Cold War reach. Bill Clinton ordered strikes in the Balkans and the Middle East, grappling with humanitarian crises and terrorist threats. George W. Bush's administration became defined by the War on Terror, leading to engagements in Afghanistan and Iraq after the attacks of September 11, 2001. Barack Obama inherited these conflicts, oversaw operations in Libya, and expanded the drone program, while Donald Trump authorized airstrikes in Syria and continued counterterrorism campaigns. Joe Biden similarly has navigated crises from Afghanistan's withdrawal to emerging tensions with global rivals. Throughout the eras, each president inherited or initiated conflicts shaped by geopolitical rivalries, ideological confrontations, or domestic pressures. The stories vary in their details, but a constant pattern emerges. The presidency is intrinsically tied to decisions of war and peace, shaped by inherited obligations, emergent threats, and the formidable reach of American power. The immediate impact of these wars has often been increased executive power, reshaping the balance between the president and Congress. Each conflict, whether declared or not, has solidified the commander-in-chief's authority, sometimes bypassing traditional checks and balances in the name of national security. This expansion of executive privilege manifests in surveillance programs, unilateral military decisions, and the steady growth of defense budgets. In turn, the personal legacies of presidents became bound to the wars they fight, with their popularity rising or falling according to perceived successes or failures on the global stage. In contemporary discussions, these patterns remain highly relevant. Modern presidents wrestle with threats like terrorism, cyber warfare, and great power competition, echoing older debates about moral responsibility and pragmatic self-interest. The technological advancements used in the 21st century conflict, from drones to hacking, intensify concerns about accountability and civilian impact. Meanwhile, domestic attitudes towards war fluctuate as citizens question the cost in lives and resources. Long-term veterans care, psychological trauma, and economic burdens linger well beyond the official end of any conflict. These issues remind us that the mantle of a war president extends far beyond the battlefield, shaping cultural narratives and national priorities for generations. History affirms that war is woven into the fabric of the American presidency. Each commander-in-chief confronts inherited conflicts or emergent crises that demand action. Yet must it always be this way? While some presidents have sought peace, few escape the shadow of conflict entirely. Recognizing this perpetual cycle prompts reflection on national interests, global responsibilities, and leadership choices. Perhaps diplomacy and cooperation offer paths to redefine American entanglement. Understanding war's enduring grip may inspire a deeper conversation about the presidency's role in forging a more peaceful future. Maybe the real question isn't why every U.S. president is a war president, but why America always seems to need one. If you appreciated this video, please like, share, and subscribe to keep these dialogues going. It's time we all participate in shaping a more thoughtful conversation about our nation's past, present, and future.